Hello, everybody, and happy Wednesday. Nina here. And for those of you who do not know, my business partner, Robin. And we have a really interesting topic today, and maybe a little off topic in terms of video, but we'll get there eventually. But today we're talking about dealing with the unexpected, curveballs and forks included. And why we chose this topic is because we just, as clockwise, have had both of late. I'm about to go into surgery, which is kind of biggish. And I've had the luxury of preparing for it and driving myself nuts over it. And then Robin, on the other hand, has had his share of curveballs. And I'd love for you to share.
I could share. It's been a health year for us at Clockwise. So we've got Nina surgery coming up, and then I found out in early February that I have hopefully not anymore, stage 2 cancer. So I had surgery back in February, and then just finished what is hopefully my final round of chemotherapy a few weeks ago. So our, just to compare and contrast, right? We've got Nina's surgery coming up, which is something we've had a lot of time to prepare for. And then, I had my major health issue, cancer, which was a total surprise. So we're going to kind of get into the weeds of, I'm stealing your thunder a little bit, Nina, but feel free to fill in after me. We're going to get into the weeds of, how do you run a business when you're dealing with a major health issue, expected and unexpected? What are some of the kind of general lessons to take away from that? And how and specifically how it's different to deal with a major illness when you're running your own business, or you're responsible for your own, generating what your business is and what your content is, as opposed to somebody who, works a 9 to 5 and you might have sick leave, or at the very least, has like a team or a manager that can step in and kind of take over the workload and the responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that, Nina?
Oh, I mean, so much, right? I mean, it's when you're, freelancer or small business owner, I think it's similar. Although I think as a small business owner, you have much more leeway to plan, and to remove yourself from the day to day. As a freelancer, you basically don't. It's always a question: how far or how much can you drive, or should you drive or yourself nuts with the what if? And I think it's a what if well beyond having disability insurance or any kind of thing in place that is supposed to kick in, because I know from experience, when I had a massive accident in 2006, is even if you do have disability insurance, there's so many but ifs and whens that by the time it kicks in, your business is all gone anyway. So and as a freelancer, as a small business owner, you just never have a bad day, right? You're always on, you're always performing. So if you get sick or you're out, what then happens, right? To the delivery, to not just delivery to your clients, but also to, filling the pipeline with fresh leads. That can all very quickly go by the wayside. So Robin, what was the experience for you? Because, you are very involved with Clockwise. You're my partner, but you also run your own business, and you work with another small business owner as well. So how did that play out on these fronts? I mean, you had no time. I mean, it came boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky to. I'm very lucky. All of the people that I work with, in my own business and everything there, are all people that I've worked with more or less long term, that I have well-established relationships with. So it was very easy. I guess there was one part about it that was really easy, and there was one part about it that was really hard. The easy part was, it was very easy to be like open about what was happening. It was, and in a way, it was like there was no choice about. We're going to talk a little bit later about communicating about your illness to the public or to your clients. And in my case, it was really no choice, because it's like, I found out, and then I've got surgery 5 days later with the recovery time. And it's not, for me, there was no option to just like not tell anybody what was going on and disappear off the map, right? It's like, hey, I have meetings next week that I've got to cancel because of this, right? So it was easy to be upfront about what was going on. And Dana Froriep, is this going to be available after the live show? Yeah, we'll have this up for recording, and we'll put the recording up. But for me, it was very easy, just like being open about it with everybody that I work with. Like, hey, this is something that I'm going to be dealing with for the next few months. And I was very lucky to have everybody be super cool and supportive about it. I have some thoughts on kind of going more into the weeds in terms of how it affected the way in which I work. But before I get into that, I wanted to pass the ball back to you, Nina, and see if you had anything to kind of add.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's if can't, no matter what it is, an accident, cancer, etc. There's nothing you can do, right? It's not like you got drunk and then decided to go on a trip for 3 weeks and sober out, and we're being irresponsible. It's like you got cancer. I mean, who's going to argue with that, right? Or when I had my accident, when I already had Clockwise in 2006, I got hit by a car and nearly lost my left leg, and I mean that was massive. I was out for months back then. And the existing clients, you just manage as well as you can, and you find replacements as well as you can. And I was lucky that I got myself run over in the summer when there wasn't much going on, so I timed it really well. And I think there's sort of the difference, right, between what happens when it is unexpected, the curveball, as to what happens when you have, like in my case, surgery, which I've been putting off for way too long at this point. And then you go like, okay, I'm going to do it. And you choose that date 3 months out, and you think, now I have plenty of time to prepare. And then in the end, surgery is in 10 days, and 10 days, and I'm still hustling like mad, right? So that's a very kind of different situation. And if you have more lead time, then do you choose to communicate or not? I think in your case, again, things happen so fast that you kind of have no choice, right?
Yeah.
And at least with the people you were working with directly. And I think the people I work with directly, it would never even occur to me not to be completely straightforward about what's going on. For me, the question would be, and that includes my clients, by the way. But then, what happens when you're one or two removed, right? Now, am I telling the leads I'm talking with, am I putting this out in social media? How far advanced am I putting that out in social media? I think that is where a lot of questions come up around what is appropriate and what isn't, or it's really a question what feels right to you and what doesn't, right? Well, and it falls in place with what your brand is, I think, in the end, right? Do you have a super open, heart on the sleeve kind of relationship with your online community and with the people that you talk to, or are you a little more, cards close to your chest? I don't think either is right or wrong.
Yeah, that's a great point about sharing in terms of what your brand is. And I think, in a way, just what I don't know, but, both of us are content creators, right? And so we're almost pre-programmed to share publicly, right? So it's a very different, experience than, if, we were like logistics coordinators for a trucking company.
Of course,
it's a different relationship with like, who needs to know, right? Or not even needs to know, but like who's appropriate to share with.
Yeah. But I think you still can choose. I mean, it's like this guy. Oh God, what's his name? Ron Reich, I think is his name. He said, choose the 4 things or the 5 things that you want to share about your private or about yourself with people on social media, and then stick with it. And I thought that was actually really good advice, because then you sort of have these 5 topics. It's not overwhelming. It's not too many facets of you, and people can kind of sink their teeth into it. And like, his example was, I don't know, or actually what I did of it, which is much more appropriate here, is like I said, okay, people know I'm from Switzerland. They know I have a dog who rules my life. They know, I don't know, I don't even know anymore what it is, but I chose 5 things, right? And my pet peeves are X, and that in a way also helps the conversation. But now if you're introducing something as big as being gone, and in your case it's also very physically apparent that you've gone through chemo.
Yeah, and that's actually, we actually haven't talked about this, but one of the big things I've been wrestling with is, I show up on camera a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily in Clockwise content, but there are a lot of other places where I show up publicly, and I've been I've been wrestling with exactly how to deal with it, because in some place, it's like, especially we have this distinction between like tissue content and legacy content. Tissue
Yeah.
content being like kind of single use, but not like I show up on video, and sometimes I show up on video for myself, and sometimes I show up on video for a different brand.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for like I'm not doing any of that at the moment, because there's almost like this layer of, I've shown it, it's like people have seen me represent this brand before, and now all of a sudden I look different. Like, that kind of demands an explanation.
Yep.
When can I show up again? You know what I mean? Like, I've had cancer, so all of my hair's fallen out. You know what I mean? If I all of a sudden show up and I look totally different, right? Where's the explanation for that? And when can I go back to, because the way I look visually is like part of that visual representation as well. So that's just like a layer of work that is been kind of on pause for me.
Mm-hmm.
And is something that that I've certainly been, even still, I'm not sure exactly how to handle that. How to navigate like re-entering making legacy video content that's going to be around on the internet for a while. I'm mirrored in my image, so I'm trying to fix my hat, but I'm fixing the wrong side.
Welcome to the ladies' world.
Yeah.
I think, and talking of ladies' world, I think for, and I'm just saying this out, and if I'm wrong, correct me. But I think on the female versus male side, maybe we women are more used to having different hairstyles and looking like, sometimes I look at videos, I'm like, oh shit, I had really long hair here, or that day I chose to be curly, or that day I blew my hair out, and blah 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 blah. So there's more of a thought process around that, a little more than maybe for you guys. But again, to go back to the drunken example, you could have lost a bet in a bar somewhere and had to shave your head. And there's some people who think a bald head is super sexy. There's that.
Yeah, but again, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But it's not just the fact that I look differently. It's that it'd be like if all of a sudden Clockwise started, if like you went through a rebranding and just didn't explain it to anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes and no. And I think, if you go through a rebranding, at some point you have a rebranding, and you're not going to explain it to everybody, right? We went through rebranding last year. We announced it because we were proud of it, and we loved it, and we loved our new colors and all that. But of all the people that follow us, probably 95% missed that video or missed that announcement, and they just kind of caught up to it, right? So, I used to have a buzz cut. If I decide, close to a buzz cut, if I decide to go back to a buzz cut, I go back to a buzz cut. Would I make an announcement about it? No, I wouldn't. It'd just be, I'd just be looking different, So, yeah, yes and no. But I hear you loud and clear that there is this moment where you go like, okay, I'm not going to be on camera for a while, unless, until this hasn't grown in again a little bit, or until it's not that stark looking, or until I feel comfortable being on camera again. I think it's much more, I would think it would be an internal thing for you too, to feel comfortable, to be able to not just go through the motion, but actually be yourself and be with yourself in showing up on camera, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I mean, now with me having the luxury of over preparing myself, I might add, as in over, um, you know, I am shooting a ton of content in advance. Bryn, Robin, you and I, we've been planning our content calendar all the way through mid July, just so I have enough time to. I'm having back surgery, so it's not a small thing. But to have the surgery, then who knows what I'm going to look like? Who knows whether I can even sit for any length of time? And no, I do not necessarily want to shoot videos, lying in my bed. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna, for me, it's more of like a location thing. I want to look. I mean, if I'm like right now, I'm not branded. I just came to Switzerland, which is where I'm having the surgery, and I haven't put up my backdrop yet. And that's fine too. It doesn't have to be perfect and always super branded, but and I feel like I'm enough of the brand to not have to always have a blue gray background behind me.
Yeah. Really quick, I just want to answer. We got a couple comments.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I think it's Rocio. Yeah, we answered Dana earlier. Actually, Bryn, who's our StreamYard fairy. If you can type this in the comments, also in case anybody else has the same question. Yeah, the recording is going to be available afterwards if you're not able to watch the whole thing right now and you want to catch up on it later. Yeah. And then we had the name's not showing up for me, but we had somebody else on LinkedIn say personal comfort is the real theme.
Yeah.
Right. So most people don't think about your appearance nearly as much as you think they do, which is very true. Yeah. Also,
100% agree. 100% agree. I think we're overthinking it. And I mean, that's the whole thing with the naked video series when I started that, right? Is I wanted to give myself permission to just show up and do a video, even if it's not perfect. And, originally the naked referred to me not dealing with makeup and hair. And then very quickly I realized it also means the video doesn't need to be dressed up. So, be a little less hoity-toity or a little less high end with your graphics, etc. But I think comfort level for sure. And on that note, so where is the comfort level with announcing or sharing or now, especially since the pandemic or with the pandemic and also media and in our little Zoom cubicles, how much do you share and how far do you go? Especially you with the cancer, how was that for you, Robin?
I mean, I touched on this a little bit earlier. I'm somebody who's very used to, not very used to, but like I'm very comfortable with sharing openly. So for me it was mostly a matter of thinking about it practically, like who needs to know.
Right.
When it's something like you're going through, you're going through an unexpected, an extreme cancer treatment, and like you mentioned, it's obvious, that I have gone through something in the last few months. It's not like I look the same. So for me, it was it was just more practical to be very open about it on social media. I've had anybody who finds out reaches out, which is lovely. But especially going through chemotherapy, I don't have time to write or talk to everybody who wants to know what's going on with me. So it was just much more practical to share about it periodically on social media, and then everybody knows what's going on and everybody's caught up, and I don't need to have the same, not that I haven't been having the same conversation over and over again, but I think to a lesser degree than if it had been otherwise. I realize that's not for everybody, but also, like you mentioned, and as it relates to work or being a business owner as well, it's not something like, it's not something like where I have a job and I can just, it's like, I'm sick, I'm not coming into work for a few months, and I can just kind of clock out. You know what I mean? Like I have all of these balls that are still rolling, and I have all of this stuff that sure, I could have chosen not to be responsible for that, but then I'll tell you, going through chemo was terrible, but going through the recovery is also super lame. And a big part of that, what makes it, I mean, for me, like, I like being responsible and I like doing stuff, but there's, I have all of this anxiety and stress now about like picking up slack. That I haven't, there's all this stuff that I haven't done that like I want to catch up to where I was before. Now that I'm starting to feel better, it's like I want to get back to that place where I was before cancer, and I've got that extra bit that I need to go to. It's like if you haven't, if you're used to being really in shape and then you stop working out for 6 months, that first like month or two, it takes a while to get back into it, and it's the same for me. And if I had not been open with people about it, I feel like there would have been an extra thing to catch up to.
Yeah, you would feel more pressure to hold up appearances, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't have energy for that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and who does? But I think I also think, I mean, a couple of thoughts here. I also think it's maybe a bit of a question also of what, how, you were, you had photos that you put up on Facebook, and I'm assuming your Facebook is more private than it's not. And
it's all personal connection.
Yeah, so
it's all
keeping people up to date. I would imagine you would not have done the same thing if you had a following on LinkedIn.
That's true, and I'm not a heavy personal LinkedIn user. My LinkedIn is very small, and I haven't posted anything on it.
Yeah. And I think it's also, and and then the other thing I'm thinking about as I'm hearing you talk, and you and I talked about this briefly in preparation to this, is also, I think there's cultural differences, and then there is generational differences. And I think if I were to go through cancer at my age, I'd be a little more cautious about sharing. I feel back surgery is less of a big deal because it's mechanical. And I'm just paying for all the years I was marathon running and doing making good use of the body I had.
Right.
So, but I also am very aware of, and I remember, I mean, first of all, there's an awful lot of people I know, women and men, who will not divulge their age, that are freelancer, that are sort of in the production world, because they're afraid of being sidelined, because they're not, fit anymore to withstand the, 18-hour days and all that, really demanding schedule that we often have in these big video productions. And on set, etc. And I know I always talked happily about all my marathon running and triathlons and all that, because I also felt it was like a calling card, like, she might not be 20 anymore or 30 anymore, but, here's somebody who's super fit. So not even a question about how old I was, right? It was like, fit, can do the job, no problem.
Yeah.
But I think in the world I'm in now, and that we're in now, that is much less of a consideration, right? Because we're not doing these marathon days anymore. I think in my case, I can now benefit from having the experience, from having seen it all, from not being flabbergasted or at a loss in any situation, because there's barely any situation I haven't faced, at least when it comes to film and video production. So I think if I was still a freelancer or still dependent on being picked up as a freelancer from bigger companies, I probably would be I'd be going on a world trip, and not be available for 3 months.
Right. And not doing back surgery.
Yeah. But again, I think if I were to do that, it would be against every grain of my body, because, and I think that's also part of how we come across as Clockwise, is very, very sort of what you see is what you get, very open, very, straightforward, honest. And with that, I think, so I'm having back surgery, and I'm not going to be very responsive for a couple of weeks, you know?
Well, and again, and this is kind of cynical, but again, as content producers, you know, like people are attracted to authenticity and to an authentic story. You know, I mean, it's not a, like, you know, my Facebook is personal. It's not for business use, but you know, I have never had such great engagement on on Facebook as I have with, you know, with people being concerned about me having cancer. You know what I mean? Like people, you know, that's a very it's like you said, it's not a disadvantage to share about what you're going through personally if you're a content creator, depending on what your brand is, like you mentioned before,
I think
in the same way that it can be for other stuff.
Yeah, and I think, but the key, I think, is how you frame it, right?
Mhm.
If you and I had this conversation we're having right now, and we just be having a crutch fest over how sorry we feel for ourselves, and you know, please do business with us because we're like starving here, that will
That's
probably
right.
not go down really well.
I'm so sick with cancer. Please hire me.
I'm like, I can barely sit through my classes with you because I'm in so much pain. No, yeah, totally kidding. But you know, yeah, but if you're taking that experience and learning from it and making it a learning experience for others to listen into and either share what they're learning. So if you have similar experiences as you're watching this, you know, please hit the comments, and you know, if you're doing replay, just do a hashtag replay, and then share your comments. And if you're live, just, you know, knock yourself out. You know, I think we you know, it also doesn't have to be tragic. It can be having a baby, getting married and wanting to go on a proper honeymoon and not just do, you know, like so many Americans do, like, you know, half a weekend, and I'm being very cynical here, but you know, there are reasons and there are places in our, you know, lifetime, you know, in our life story where we're just not available 24/7. But I think a lot of us have created this 24/7 availability for better and for worse. And I think that needs to be probably managed some in certain, you know, moments. And to go back to what the LinkedIn user said, whose name we can't see, is, you know, it is all about, you know, I don't think people are that engaged. I mean, unless you're like super, super famous, I don't think anybody's going to even notice if we're not doing a month of, you know, real talk with Nina, or if we're not posting fresh content, you know, a couple times a week. I don't think anybody's even going to notice.
Yeah, as long, you know, and I just want to throw a little caveat in there, that, you know, it's like I think people would notice if we were disappearing totally off the map. You know, I think the distinction you're drawing is we're not, you know, we're not doing like the same level of like brand new or on the spot. You know, it's like it's pre-planned.
Yeah, I think I think the difference, and funnily enough, a year ago I wouldn't have had even these thoughts or this conversation, but I think if anything has taught us the last year is that there's something really powerful to be said about having content that is specific to what's going on around you. I mean, if a pandemic hits and you just continue selling with pre-produced content that is totally tone deaf, or, you know, in New York, all three of us are in New York. You know, we had, you know, the massive protests, Black Lives Matter, which is, you know, we just had the 1 year anniversary a couple of days ago. I think yesterday. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just flew to Switzerland. I'm like all over the place. So, you know, it's really important to often, I think nowadays, to be with your content timely, and to speak into the conversation that is happening. Which is not to say that you can't have a nice library of things that you've pre-produced that you can fall back onto. Because, you know, the other thing I always talk to my clients about is life can happen and shit happens. And sometimes, and hopefully most often than not, it's small stuff, right? You're out for a day or two unexpected. So if you have pre-produced content or you have a little library, you can fall back onto that, or just not post for a couple of days, and, you know, nothing much is going to happen. But, you know, having cancer, having back surgery, those are longer term things where there needs to be some planning or some wiggle room or something, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So so do you feel that so in terms of like putting out content when the curveball hits you, what would you say? Is this just go dark and explain later? Is it put out stuff as you go and explain? What is your thought on that?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I'm going to answer that in kind of a roundabout way. Like you mentioned, I mean, for your for your surgery coming up, we had a lot of forewarning, and so we were able to we were able to front load our content creation, right? We do the work
Yeah.
now so we can do it later, right? With the cancer, it was just like, oh, you've got cancer, and it's been really illuminating for me because thanks, Helen, and Matthew. But it's been a very illuminating experience for me because part of going through chemotherapy is you become like your brain stops working very well. And this is something that has been a big frustration for me. Is I write a lot. For everybody that doesn't know me very well, like I do a lot of things, but in my opinion, the thing that I do that creates the most value is writing, or coming up with original content. And going through chemo, like that was something that I really wasn't expecting. Was like all of a sudden my brain's not working anymore, and I have a really hard time being articulate in the way that I'm used to being.
Yeah.
And so, this is not clockwise, but one of the another company that I work with, I do like in-depth research and written blog articles and video topics. And I have just, with Clockwise, it's great because we have this whole team. We were able to front load, content production. And I had done that a little bit, but I hadn't been able to plan for it. And so I'm like really far behind. And I mean, nobody cares. Everybody's being really cool. But for me, like I'm really far behind in terms of content production there. It's like I was able to get a lot of writing done this last weekend for the first time in, months.
Yeah.
And as a content creator, that's been really hard, and it's been necessary for me to. I've been very lucky also because everybody that I work with, there are all of these like small content production teams. So it's been easy, and I think you're kind of having this experience right now, but it's been very necessary for me to rely much more on a team dynamic. And having cancer has changed my, has done one thing for me as a small business owner and a content producer. It's had me get much more serious about looking at how I can not be the bottleneck in terms of content production, and how I can rely more on like creating systems and utilizing a team environment for that, right? So that it's not just me.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up a really, really important topic, which is letting go of control. And there's nothing like an unexpected curveball or that fork in the road where you are forced to let go of controlling whatever it is that you're controlling, or you feel you need to control. And I mean, I've relied much more on you and Bryn to write original content, or to just take on stuff that I normally would have done and not even thought of letting go of. And to my, well, I shouldn't be surprised, but the world goes on, everything's still perfect, and it's probably better written than it has been in a long time. Because I even feel like at some time, at some point you probably have a little bit of content fatigue, so it's really nice to bring in the fresh voice. And for me, that's been, that's sort of and I've gone through this exercise in my life before, where and like when I had the accident in 2006, that was, I mean, I just had to let go. I could not control everything anymore. And I had to let go. I mean, I went out to a bike ride. I was training for a half Ironman and got, run over by a car, literally. I went out for a bike ride on a Saturday morning at 6 a.m. and just never came home. Right. And that was just it for months. So that is, there wasn't even like any kind of preparation possible. And that was that was something really nice that came out of it, because now my team had to step up, and they stepped up, and it was a much smaller team back then, but it really showed me that, not terrible things do not happen when you let go.
Right. Yeah. And probably exactly, probably the opposite. Right. I mean, that's the whole, it's hard. I don't entirely believe the, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But I heard somebody say something yesterday that I liked better than that, which is, it's pushing through resistance, which builds muscles. And certainly
land physically. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. I would say, even though I have not been as prolific of a content producer in the past few months, I've gained a new perspective that I think is going to be an asset going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also, if you're sharing with your clients and working with your clients, if you tell people, I think there's a real difference in being able to say, you should, or you say, this is what just happened to me, and this is the outcome, and this is why this worked and didn't work. It becomes a much more tangible, or more real experience that you can, share with your clients, and hope that they will get benefit from it in a real way. Because a lot of what we do really is, we live and do as we teach, right? So so now when I say, you need to have a video bank, you need to have a content bank, and I mean, the bank we are creating right now is pretty massive, because it's 2.5 months out, right? So we're sort of catching up to it, but still, I mean, we started in April to plan ourselves all the way out to mid-July. So, and we're already end of May, so it's moving fast.
It always does.
It's moving fast. So anything you think we should be touching on that we haven't touched on, Robin? And any comments that we should look at?
Yeah, everybody's been super awesome in the comments, although not a lot of questions.
No. I have a feeling that, because it's during the business day, some people will watch the replay. If you do and you have questions, just write them in the comments with #replay. And this will be up and running on my LinkedIn feed. And you can also ping me, and I can send you a direct link, be it to LinkedIn or it's also on YouTube's on our channel. So there's ways to get to it. Bryn and I will make sure that happens. Great. Well, it's mostly Bryn.
Bryn will make sure it happens.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bryn.
Thanks, Bryn. She's waving. She's in the background. All right. Are we in a good spot to wrap it up, Robin?
I think we are. I think I've said everything that I had thought about to say in advance.
Good. I hope that some new stuff came up for you as well. So this is a really long roundabout way to say there will be no lives in June. And I think, Robin, you and I actually have one planned for July, if I'm not totally wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the first one that we have back.
Yeah, exactly, at the other end. So I hope you will all have a wonderful summer, and enjoy, hopefully, some newfound freedoms as we're getting out of this pandemic. So I hope for all of you, and be well, stay healthy, and I hope those curveballs and forks are not showing up anytime soon.
Right.
And I'll talk to all of you in one way or another before long.
Cool. Thanks for watching.
Okay. Thanks for watching. Ciao, ciao.